This means we should neither view the world as our enemy or as our home. As Christians, we often struggle to know how we should relate to the world around us. Some Christians act like the world is their enemy, retreating away from it into their own safe little huddles. Other Christians act like the world is our home, as if the goal of life in this world is just to get by as comfortably as possible. But when we look at the grand story of the Bible in its entirety, knowing that there is an end goal for all history gives us an entirely different perspective of life in this world. I think the best way to describe that perspective is the contrast theologians often use between already and not yet. Let me explain what I mean. Do you remember that old movie, The Wizard of Oz? It's the story of a young girl named Dorothy who becomes lost in the magical land of Oz. To get home, she seeks help from the great Wizard of Oz. The Grand Wizard agrees to use his power to send Dorothy home, provided she supply him with the broomstick belonging to the Wicked Witch of the West. It's a long and dangerous quest, but when Dorothy and her friends return successful, the wizard begins to backpedal on his promise. As Dorothy and the wizard argue back and forth, Dorothy's little dog Toto runs to the corner and pulls back a curtain, revealing a strange little man in a closet full of knobs and pulleys. The truth revealed was that there was no great and powerful Wizard of Oz. It was all smoke and mirrors. This is in effect what God has done through the grand story of the Bible. He has pulled back the curtain to show us the truth about himself, the world, and our lives in it. But it's almost the exact reverse of the Wizard of Oz. In our case, the illusion is that we are the ones in control. Whether it's the declared authority of nations or world governments, the trust we place in economic, social, or military forces, or even our own personal sense that we are the masters of our own destiny, the perspective of our world is that we are somehow the ones in control. And that is all smoke and mirrors. The truth is that the world and our lives in it exist and are unfolding according to the absolutely sovereign and eternal rule of God. As Psalm 47 tells us, "For God is the King of all the earth. God reigns over the nations. God sits on his holy throne." This means we should neither view the world as our enemy or as our home. Rather, in realizing the end goal of God's restoring work, we should view the world as we know it, as sitting in some kind of in-between state of the already and the not yet. We say already because in Jesus Christ, the eternal rule and reign of God has already entered the world. As we just read in Psalm 47, God has always ruled as king over creation, but humanity's fall into sin placed the world in rebellion against that rule. But through Jesus Christ, the Son of God made man, God has forever established his rule and reign over humanity again. Here's how the Apostle Paul puts it again in Ephesians 1. He says that God raised Christ from the dead and seated him at his right hand in the heavenly realm, far above all rule and authority, power and dominion. And God placed all things under his feet and appointed him to be the head over everything. What Paul is telling us as plainly as he can is that Jesus' absolute authority is already in force. In simple terms, this picture we saw earlier, John's vision of Jesus reigning and ruling as king over all heaven and earth, that's not a picture of the future. It's already begun. It's happening right now. But when we look around the world, that's not yet what we see, is it? We see a world that, for the most part, is carrying on as if Jesus isn't really there. The fact is that Jesus already reigns, but God has not yet brought the fullness of Jesus' reign into the world. He's still allowing Satan freedom to exert his rebellious influence, and he's still allowing sinful people to live their lives on their own terms. And there's a reason for that. In 2 Peter 3, the Apostle Peter tells us that the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. Peter's giving a warning reminder that the future picture of judgment we saw earlier is coming. It hasn't yet, however, because as Peter says, God is patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to repentance. You see, once we grasp the grand story of the Bible and understand the end goal of God's restoring work, it completely changes the way that we look at the world. We come to see that the world exists in a very temporary space. In a way, it's as if the world is suspended between two places. On the one hand, the world is the place where Jesus already reigns and rules as king. But on the other hand, it is also the place where those who oppose God, whose hearts are set against his rule and reign over their lives, are allowed to live and enjoy so many of the good gifts that God gives, even as they deny God as the giver. And the reason they're permitted to do so is because God in his mercy, grace, and love is still leaving opportunity for any who might yet turn and be restored to live with him by putting their hope and trust in Jesus as their Redeemer. Well, now we come to what is maybe the most important question. So what? How does God's restoring work for his creation impact your life today? You just watched a very small part of our video series called Seeing the World as Jesus Sees It. If you want to learn more about how the Bible can change the way you see everything and transform your life, then click on the link in the description below. And thanks for watching.